The year 2017 will be remembered by many as a year of extremes. Local weather anomalies caused massive flooding and mudslides in South America. Wildfires spread across arid lands, consuming forests, leveling buildings, and causing unprecedented loss of life in Europe and America. 2 deadly earthquakes struck Mexico in separate locations just weeks apart.
It was incredible. We thought it was the end.
And a series of record-breaking hurricanes battered the Caribbean one after another in an onslaught of devastation.
It wasn't a cyclone, it was the devil.
You could hear it roaring, you know, like a train coming or something.
Eyewitnesses describe what happened, while experts explain the science behind these events.
Clearly, the biggest headlines are going to be for 3 significant hurricanes in the Atlantic: Harvey, Irma, Maria. But we've had a number of other significant events. Very bad wildfires. It's been the 3rd hottest year. Big heat waves have led to wildfire. And then we've seen a number of flood events too.
Using only professionally shot footage capturing the heart of the action, this film presents the major natural disasters of 2017, from the least deadly to the most dramatic. The year 2017 was notable for a wide range of natural disasters. Every year, catastrophes cause loss of life around the globe. But in 2017, a large number of people died as a result of an unexpected tragedy. After suffering a long dry period, California was a tinderbox ready to ignite. In October, conditions were such that no one was surprised when a series of wildfires flared up throughout several counties in the north of the state. Drought, dry fuel, and high winds caused the fires to spread rapidly, moving from wilderness to urban centers overnight. Hundreds of separate fires were reported, and firefighters were unable to contain them as they blazed out of control, destroying everything in their path. The fire's progress into residential areas shocked risk management experts like Robert Muir Wood.
In a wildland fire, typically the fuel of the fire is the vegetation and the trees, the eucalyptus trees, the pine trees. But in California, one of these fires in October actually moved into a city, and the fuel was the houses themselves. So the fuel was the wooden houses, quite densely packed, burning, and we lost 5,000 houses in one fire.
The California fires changed the way experts viewed wildfires. Until 2017, it was unthinkable that a fire could spread so rapidly and cause so much damage in an urban landscape. But these extraordinary blazes changed all preconceived notions about how forest fires could spread. More than 1 million acres of land were destroyed. At least 41 people were killed, and the economic cost could be close to $6 billion. Earlier in the year, Europe had also witnessed a ferocious, fatal fire. Early in the summer of 2017, the Iberian Peninsula was sweltering in a searing heat wave with temperatures often above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. On the 17th of June, for reasons that still have not been confirmed, 156 fires erupted in the Pedrógão Grande area in central Portugal, spreading dramatically and creating a firestorm. What is clear is that hotter, drier summers are setting off more forest fires, accelerating the ongoing migration from rural areas, leaving lands untended that in turn fuels new and more intense fires. As the fires rapidly spread, rural inhabitants like Leandro Barata had to make quick decisions about how to react to the encroaching flames.
Well, I was having a rest when I heard a helicopter and voices. I got up and saw the fire straight away. The fire was 300 meters from the village. The bushes were burning. The fire was burning everything in its path. Grapevines and the houses were in danger.
A lack of infrastructure and communication problems meant inhabitants were frequently left to their own devices, and the area was plunged into chaos and confusion. 1,600 Portuguese firefighters fought an intense battle against the flames that spread faster than they could be subdued. The region is known for its extensive pine forests, but invasive eucalyptus trees proved particularly dangerous. They contain a highly flammable sap that explodes in extreme heat, causing the fires to spread and intensify. Firefighting aircraft from neighboring France and Spain dropped tons of water onto the blazes in a bid to bring them under control. The area has experienced wildfires before, but never on this scale. As the fires took hold, destroying vegetation and approaching villages, many inhabitants found themselves trapped in their homes. Lucia Pereira was one of them.
Here it was hell. It was an absolute hell. At 6 o'clock in the evening, both fires joined together here. There are no words to describe what happened here yesterday. It's the first time in my life that I can remember a situation like that. We were completely surrounded. People outside said that the flames passed over the top of the roof, from one side to the other.
The fires ravaged more than 100,000 acres as firefighters contended with searing heat and rapidly shifting winds. Forest fires generally cause huge devastation to natural areas, but have a relatively low death toll. But as weather conditions deteriorated, the rapid pace of the fire took everyone by surprise. Desperately trying to flee the area, 30 people were burned to death in their cars, trapped by the flames on a rural road, while 17 others died as they tried to escape on foot. Only 4 months later, Portugal would go up in flames again. A huge number of fires, allegedly set deliberately by arsonists, blazed across the country, and conditions worsened when high winds fanned and spread the flames, making it impossible for emergency workers to fight them.
We had these very fierce fires flaring up, first of all in June and then again in October in Portugal, with large loss of life. I mean, the loss of life in such fires, people tried to escape in their cars straight into the fires. I mean, one thing we've learned about wildfires, especially after heat waves, they can move incredibly fast, and much faster than it's possible to control them. And so fast that it's incredibly dangerous for people who are living downwind.
64 people lost their lives in June, the largest loss of life due to wildfire in Portugal's history. Another 45 died in the fires in October, raising questions about the country's rescue services and their ability to respond to disaster of this scale. While some countries suffered from intense heat and dry conditions, others experienced the worst flooding in decades. The island nation of Sri Lanka is famed for its sandy beaches, tropical forests, and tea plantations. Sri Lanka is also affected by 2 monsoons. Each year, the southwest monsoon causes a shift in wind direction, which typically brings heavy rain from May to September. Having suffered drought conditions for 2 months and with water levels well below normal, the 2017 monsoon was eagerly awaited. At the end of May, the expected rains arrived, and then some. Over the course of 3 days, up to 18 inches of rain fell in some places, and inhabitants soon realized that this was not the beneficial monsoon they were hoping for. The country's Disaster Management Center issued evacuation notices for residents along several rivers, appealing to people to move to higher ground.
When the water level rises, we have nowhere to go. All we can do is move everything we can to high ground. But if the water level rises too much, we have no choice. We would have drowned. We were lucky. Lots of people drowned, and there was a lot of damage. It's sad.
By the evening of May 25th, water levels had risen and transformed the countryside from lush greenery to lagoons. Roads and access to villages turned into rivers, and many places could only be reached by boat.
Everything was flooded. Everything was washed away with the water. The water rose up to the first floor. A lot of things were washed away. We stayed with him. People from 4 different houses were staying with him. They fed us all for days.
Some rivers rose by as much as 50 feet, submerging the countryside for miles around. Residents found themselves in an unrecognizable landscape, surrounded by water. The worst flooding that the country had experienced in 15 years brought secondary problems. People were at increased risk of mosquito-borne dengue fever, and there were reports of crocodiles found in homes. Amil Kumarasidi's home was underwater for 4 days.
This was our kitchen. It was destroyed by the flooding. The walls broke and the roof was washed away by the water. The water stayed for 4 days. Yesterday, the water level went down. We've saved bits of roofs so we can rebuild. The water's still up to here.
In some areas, the water receded as quickly as it had risen, while in others, 10 to 12 feet of water remained. Roads, villages, and fields were submerged as land turned into lakes. As floodwaters rose, so did the death toll. Towns and villages were stranded when torrents of mud loosened by the rain thundered down hillsides. Heavy equipment was used to search for survivors, but rescue efforts were hampered by lack of drinking water, lack of electricity, and continued rain. Nearly 500,000 inhabitants were affected by the disaster.
This is the road where people go to the school and the main road from here, from this estate. So now you can not see any roads here. It has been raining for 3 days, last Friday. And at about 6 o'clock, we came to know that there is a landslide. The members of our families, they were died. Unfortunately, 3 of them were our children, our school children, students of our school. And we could find only one body of those family, and we couldn't find others. Still, they are trying to get the other bodies to confirm whether they died or not.
Tales of tragedy were common in the aftermath. Landslides hit with no warning, wiping out whole families. In other areas, water levels from flooding rose so quickly, there was no time to save any possessions. As volunteers pick through the debris, saving anything they can, the scale of the disaster is apparent. As the country modernizes, deforestation has exposed many regions to greater risk from the effects of heavy monsoon rains. Areas that once absorbed water have been cleared to grow crops like tea and rubber. In towns and cities, water levels rise quickly, putting lives in danger and wiping out livelihoods.
The monsoon sweeps through as it moves further up the Indian subcontinent. So, I mean, this year the monsoon was particularly intense and it caused significant flooding. I mean, again, Sri Lanka is a poor country. The poorest people may be living in the flood zone itself. So there are a lot of features of how poor countries will handle an event like this, which makes them particularly prone. I mean, prone to loss of life, prone to loss of housing, because they haven't moved to build the flood defenses to zone people so they don't live in the most dangerous places.
As the waters receded, 220 deaths were declared, and damage was estimated at $1.5 billion. While the monsoon is an annual occurrence, some countries are at the mercy of events that are very difficult to predict. Mexico is one of the world's most seismically active regions, sitting on top of several intersecting tectonic plates. These plates, resting on the Earth's liquid mantle, constantly slide against or under each other. Along the coast of Mexico, the Cocos Plate slides underneath the North American Plate at a rate of about 3 inches per year. But these movements are not always smooth. Sudden shifts can result in earthquakes. On September 7, 2017, an 8.2 magnitude earthquake struck the Gulf of Tehuantepec off the south coast of Mexico. Despite being the strongest earthquake to hit the country in the last century, the death toll was relatively low. But less than 2 weeks later, a second earthquake struck. During the dramatic events, Carlos Gonzalez was watching his seismographs.
On the 19th of September at 11 o'clock, we were doing a national earthquake prevention drill. Then 2 hours later, at 1:14 p.m., we were hit by a 7.1 magnitude earthquake located about 75 miles from Mexico City at a depth of about 40 miles.
It was quite a deep earthquake, a magnitude 7.1, and it caused a lot of damage again in the area immediately around it. But actually, Mexico City itself was located, I think, 100 kilometers or so from the location, from the epicenter of the earthquake.
Mexico City is built on a dry lake bed made of sand and clay that amplifies the destructive effects of major earthquakes. Exactly 32 years before, the 1985 Mexico City earthquake killed around 10,000 people.
It's a big coincidence to have two earthquakes on the 19th of September, one in 1985 and the other in 2017. It makes us think about the way we can prepare and inform people in the country.
When earthquake alarms sounded, many people thought this was just a continuation of the morning's drill. After 20 seconds of violent shaking, it became clear that this was no exercise. More than 40 buildings collapsed in Mexico City, killing scores and trapping hundreds of people inside. Inhabitants rushed to escape from buildings and found themselves surrounded by rubble and at risk from gas leaks. As the world became aware of the scale of this situation, teams of specialists from around the globe arrived to help rescue survivors and search for bodies. Even days after the major earthquake, the threat of aftershocks and collapsing buildings meant rescue teams were working in high-risk situations. Team members raised their arms to call for total silence, bringing the city to a temporary standstill, while experts listened intently for signs of life. Personal information, name, blood type, contact details were written on their arms in case of further accidents. Highly experienced Japanese search and rescue personnel worked tirelessly around the clock. But as time passed, signs of life would become less and less frequent. While media attention and aid were focused on the capital, smaller towns, like Huejutla, closer to the epicenter, were largely left to cope with the disaster on their own. Locals like Jorge Miranda had never experienced such an event.
I was at home, having lunch when everything started to shake violently. It was incredible. We thought it was the end. It was a terrible day for our town, because it's the first time we've been hit by an earthquake. We didn't think it would happen to us. Today, we are completely devastated. The town is in such a mess that it looks like there has been a war.
The sheer scale of solidarity in Mexico City meant that many volunteers were turned away and diverted to outlying towns that were in desperate need. Enrique Juarez and his team arrived from over 600 miles away.
We are in Huejutla. It's the worst hit area in terms of the disaster, and also where most help is needed for the population. We started a big campaign to help the whole population of the town. There are many people who participated. We gathered 8 or 9 tons of goods. Things that are essential: medication, water, everything you need to survive. Because unfortunately, we have not come to solve the problem, just to help.
The town of Huejutla was devastated by the quake. 3,000 buildings were destroyed, and at least 73 people died. Mexico had been slow to introduce strict building codes. The oldest structures suffered most in the quake. In towns like Huejutla and San Antonio Alpanocan, earthquakes are rare. Old buildings constructed using traditional techniques stood no chance against an earthquake of this size.
Where you have houses actually built effectively out of mud and cement, or what we call adobe houses, they tend to be particularly fragile to what's called high-frequency shaking. So the shaking from a smaller earthquake may well pick off adobe houses. So we see throughout South America and Central America, I mean, the old adobe houses, a lot of them have already been knocked down by earthquakes. They're extremely fragile in earthquakes. They're extremely dangerous because their walls can be heavy, the roofs can be heavy too, and they can have high levels of fatality and injury from adobe house collapse. In Mexico overall, they are very well informed about what you need to do to reduce the consequences of disasters. But if you're in a very outlying village somewhere, you may be sort of beyond the view of government, and people may simply construct the same kind of buildings they had before, unless the government comes in and actually trains the builders in actually how to build safer buildings.
Usually, the techniques of construction at Morelos and Puebla are traditionally buildings made of earth, and they don't have concrete structures. So with major earthquakes, the walls fall down. What we should do is to combine both construction techniques, concrete and steel structures with earth walls, to strengthen the houses that we need to reconstruct in these areas.
The road ahead will be a long one, and the earthquake of 2017 will remain in the people's memories for generations to come. The earthquake caused 370 deaths, and the economic cost could be as much as $2 billion. As the ground was shaking in Mexico, the Caribbean and the east coast of the United States were in the throes of one of the most exceptional hurricane seasons on record. In the Atlantic, tropical cyclones are known as hurricanes. These storms, which form between June and November, originate off the coast of Africa and move over the Atlantic towards the Caribbean. They get their strength from warm ocean water, and depending on the speed of their wind, they are classified from Category 1, the weakest, to Category 5, with wind speeds over 157 miles per hour. As soon as they make landfall, the storms lose their source of energy and dissipate. Each year, storms crossing the Atlantic are tracked in an effort to predict which will fizzle out without fuss and which will escalate out of proportion. On August 17, 2017, an Atlantic storm lost strength and authorities downgraded it to a tropical wave. Within a couple of days, no more warnings were issued, and the danger seemed to have passed. But as it moved over warm water, it gathered strength, and by August 24th, it had become a hurricane with a trajectory taking it straight towards Texas. Hurricane Harvey made landfall as a Category 4 storm with winds of 130 miles per hour, causing unprecedented destruction throughout the state. Passing over land should subdue the power of a hurricane, but Harvey had other plans.
It stalled, it stopped moving forward 3 or 4 days. It caused record levels of rainfall, never seen before over a 3 or 4 day interval in the US. This rain fell almost specifically on the greater city of Houston in Texas. Houston is the 4th largest city in the US. It's a sort of free-for-all city. It prides itself on not having any zoning controls, which means you can build anywhere. You don't have to ask the question, is it in a flood zone or not? And the city was really devastated by how much flooding there was from the rainfall.
Houston's sprawling population of 6.5 million people live on flat terrain that is prone to flooding. The storm's slow progress along the coast would have catastrophic results. The hurricane struck the heart of America's oil and gas industry, closing refineries around the Gulf Coast. Initial loss assessments in Texas estimated that almost 60,000 structures were destroyed. Evacuations were limited, and some people, like James Williams, had no choice but to stay where they were to ride out the storm.
It sounded like, first it was just real loud wind, you know, and all of a sudden you hear it roaring, you know, like a train coming or something. Then it hit, just all out of nowhere. All you could hear was just wind, and that's it. And all of a sudden, you know, when you realize you got nowhere to go, you know, that's pretty touchy feeling that you get, you know?
Less than a third of mobile homes are built to withstand the forces of hurricane winds. In marinas, most people just left their boats to their fate. The few people that remained witnessed the terrible destruction firsthand. But it was the rainfall that was truly devastating. Houston received the brunt of Harvey's precipitation, with parts of the city receiving more than 50 inches, the amount this city might expect in an average year.
One feature which we've seen over the past year or so along the western edge of the Gulf of Mexico is the hot water layer has not only been at the surface, it's been quite deep as well. So that has meant a lot of heat, a lot more evaporation, and that clearly was a factor in affecting why Harvey intensified so dramatically before landfall, but also I think when people have the chance to really examine and model this record levels of rainfall will be a signature in there of actually this temperature at the surface, but also how thick that surface layer of hot water was.
Just days after Harvey hit the Texas coast, the next major hurricane, Irma, was gaining strength out in the Atlantic. Residents of the Caribbean and Florida rushed to prepare for what was about to become the largest ever recorded Atlantic Ocean hurricane, making its way inexorably towards them. The Paradise Island of St. Martin lies less than 200 miles to the east of Puerto Rico. Half French, half Dutch, most of the 75,000-strong population is involved in the tourist industry. Conditions in the Atlantic were ideal for hurricanes. Deep warm water and no upper atmosphere disturbance means tropical storms intensify over extremely short periods, jumping from category to category and giving people less warning of their arrival. As the hurricane approached the island, it passed over warm water and intensified rapidly, making landfall on the island of St. Martin on the night of September 6th as a Category 5 storm.
Irma intensifies, Category 5, winds up to 175 miles an hour. St. Bart and St. Martin are devastated. The eye of the storm, Category 5, has just passed over the islands. Bernard Solly, you're in St. Martin, and you're living through a very difficult experience.
Practically, one part of the hotel has been ripped out. There are almost no doors, no rooms. Lots and lots of destruction here in St. Martin. The sea, the waves are practically washing into the entrance of the hotel.
I wanted to share with the listeners what was happening outside. I went out. I left my hotel room. I found myself in the corridor, and I didn't have the keys to get back in. I was in the corridor of the hotel for an hour and a half. I shielded myself between the wall and the lift, and practically an hour or an hour and a half later, I saw a little light. The light from a headlamp, someone who was in the hotel, and I realized it was the caretaker, someone who works at the hotel, and I asked him if he had the keys, if he had a key to my room. He opened my room, I went inside to take cover, and where I was outside, the roof was ripped off. I heard a boom and everything exploded around me. Honestly, I thought we were dead. Personally, I thought we were all going to die. I locked myself in the bathroom, and the water was almost up to my knees. It was a very, very difficult time, especially when I was outside my room and when I heard what was happening around me. You see, even a month afterwards, I still have trouble talking about it.
Irma intensified up to not only Category 5, but really extreme Category 5 level. I mean, to wind speeds which of 300 kilometers an hour and over, which are had never been witnessed for a hurricane in that area, at least in the last few decades, and it's sustained. I mean, typically when a tropical cyclone reaches these really intense levels, it tends not to last very long. It's quite unstable. It actually picks up some cold water. Something happens, but it actually maintained this intensity, I think, for 37 hours, and that had never been seen before.
With winds of 185 miles per hour, the hurricane bulldozed the island. What had been a haven had become a scene from hell. Inhabitants witnessed their houses shaking on their foundations. Even the country's many huge metal shipping containers were lifted by the wind and sent tumbling over land. Irma was the most powerful Atlantic hurricane in recorded history. Residents in high-risk areas were told to evacuate in the small hours of the morning.
Down here, we had the water that came in from the beach itself, came over the mangrove and flooded all the houses here, as you can see. To the top of the house, you can see the marking of where the water had reached. I came back instantly after the hurricane passed, and coming over here, I actually saw a lady right by the house, and she was dead, so I was thinking, you know what, there's lots of people that died down here, and we're not really informed about how much people.
Government officials believe that 95% of the island's buildings were destroyed or damaged by Irma. Almost nothing escaped the power of the wind and the storm surge. Boats were swept away by the wind and waves, dumped in unlikely locations. Many people had removed their boats from the water before the hurricane arrived. But despite their precautions, almost all suffered major damage. Those that remained in the ports sank or were demolished as they were smashed against each other. In the island's many marinas, the devastation remains more than a month after Irma's passage. Sticking to its path of mass destruction, the storm curved north, hitting Cuba and losing some of its power over the landmass, before making a beeline for Florida. Most of the state's wealth is concentrated on the coast, where beachfront properties are in high demand and at major risk from hurricanes. Hundreds of thousands of Floridians left their homes in the largest evacuation in the state's history. Following Harvey, a second major storm of this size in one season was unprecedented. But unusual weather systems seem to have become the norm. Hurricane Irma swept up Florida's peninsula before finally losing strength. 10 million Floridians were left without power after the storm, and damage was estimated in the billions of dollars. But out in the Atlantic, yet another hurricane was already forming. This next hurricane was called Maria, and the tiny island of Dominica lay directly in its path. Hurricane Irma had caused little damage in Dominica, and many people thought warnings about Maria were exaggerated. While some people prepared to leave their homes, others ignored the warnings. After explosive intensification, Maria doubled its sustained wind speed from 80 to 160 miles per hour, and Dominica was struck by a Category 5 hurricane. Radio DJ Stephen Dangleben was on the air when the hurricane arrived.
At some point in time, we went off air. Okay. And when we went off air, Kurt said, it is too early for us to be off air. We're the nation station. And I said, Kurt, he said, man, we have to run up to Eggleston, which is about 3 miles from here.
And when I reached the site, I said because I saw what was happening, the trees, they were swaying and there was a lot of debris to the entrance. I said, I'm giving myself 5 minutes. If I don't get the station on in 5 minutes, I have to forget about it. And I did get it on. As soon as I came, I saw the generator had a fault. I cleared the fault and started the generator. And then I head back. And on my way back was a big challenge because it had gotten worse. And there was a tree that blocked my path. So I decided to go close to the trees and use the van to break the trees. And it did work, and I came to the station.
Hurricane Maria was the 13th named storm, the 4th major hurricane, and the 2nd Category 5 hurricane in 2017. As the hurricane hit with wind speeds of 165 miles per hour, the population soon realized that this was not like any storm they had ever seen before. Passing over warm water, just like Irma, Maria intensified dramatically.
They say we were going to have a Category 3 or Category 2. But that move from 1 to 2 to 3, it skipped 4 and went directly to 5. We were not prepared for that at all. No one was.
Forecasters have a good idea where hurricanes are heading, but even experts like Ralph Toomey struggle to gauge how strong the storms are going to be.
Changes in intensity are very hard to predict still. But track was well predicted, and it was well understood that there would be severe flooding. And so the warning given out by the Weather Service was actually very accurate.
Despite warnings, the nation was taken by surprise. Melvina Boye saw that her community was not overly concerned.
All the television and radio presenters were talking about a violent hurricane that was coming. But because Irma had already passed and it hadn't done anything, we weren't afraid of Maria. We underestimated it. There and there were all people who died. A lot of the people who died were stubborn. Because we went to see them, to tell them to escape, that it could be a Category 5 storm. And they said, we've still got time. But there wasn't time. At 8:30 p.m., the water started pouring down the mountain and washed everything away.
Water rushed down ravines, tearing out trees and ripping houses from their foundations. Weeks after the storm, the cleanup operation has made little impact. In the fishing village of Scott's Head, it will be a long time before life resumes as normal. In the meantime, with schools still closed, children find entertainment where they can. The struggle for basic provisions in the aftermath consumes the inhabitants' days.
And it's the first time that I heard the wind actually whistle. It was singing, it was crying, it was howling, all at the same time and playing tunes. You know? It was just amazing, but at the same time, it was terrifying.
By September 20th, the storm, now a Category 4 hurricane, engulfed Puerto Rico, which was still reeling from Hurricane Irma a mere 2 weeks before. Winds of 155 miles per hour and more than 20 inches of rain flattened residences, tore roofs from homes, and caused major flooding. The ferocity of the storm left the entire country's 3.4 million residents without electricity and wiped out communications.
And on Puerto Rico, it also caused very significant amounts of damage, both as a wind event and as a flood event. We've seen, the way people are living now after Maria on Puerto Rico is like how they were living 100 years ago.
When the storm had passed, residents remained at risk from flooding and landslides. The 2017 hurricane season came as a major surprise, even to those who study the phenomenon. But several years of calm meant that some experts hadn't ruled anything out.
We were due a surprise. So really, it's been a quiet decade for some time in terms of landfall and activity. If you look at the historical record, this was a quiet period. And so sooner or later, it was going to go back to, if you like, normal, and it went back to normal in a big way.
What can we do? That's nature. And at the same time, I tell myself, it's a lesson. It's a lesson for us because we need to realize that nature is changing, that the planet is warming, and there will be more and more typhoons and cyclones, and they will be stronger and stronger.
Climate scientists are concerned that 3 major hurricanes in a row could be the new normal. Hurricanes get their destructive energy from ocean heat. As the ocean temperature rises, is it possible that future storms could be bigger than those we have already seen?
The theoretical limit for these storms is quite terrifying, so we haven't reached those. And it's really a combination of duration as well. So the conditions have to be favorable and they have to be favorable for a long enough time, and then you can reach very, very powerful storms. So on the whole, if you like, the potential intensity that they can reach generally isn't reached because the atmosphere, there is always some disturbance in the atmosphere which doesn't reach it. But there is definitely potential for much stronger storms.
This return to normal meant that whole islands were wiped out, with other regions taking months or even years to recover. The economic damage to the Caribbean and the United States was unparalleled.
I think overall the economic impact is probably going to be largest for Harvey, and then second for Irma with all the impacts in Florida, and then Maria in Puerto Rico. I think in terms of the long-term impact, Maria is going to have the biggest impact of all, because the reticence to provide really deep assistance from the mainland US to Puerto Rico has reduced the speed of recovery quite significantly.
The economic cost of the 3 hurricanes is estimated at over $350 billion. Harvey alone was the costliest ever hurricane. Although the official death toll for Harvey, Irma, and Maria stands at 323, we may never know how many people really died during this extreme hurricane season. 2017 is the warmest year on record that hasn't been influenced by El Nino. Apart from earthquakes, all the year's weather-related events bear the signature of global warming. Extreme floods, ferocious fires, and the strongest Atlantic hurricane ever. Our planet will always be at the mercy of natural disasters. But while we have seen hundreds of deaths this year from earthquakes and hurricanes, the situation could have been much worse.
So thankfully now we're talking about damages in terms of dollars. We're no longer talking about tens of thousands of people dying, which not so long ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago, a landfall in the United States would have killed tens and tens of thousands of people. So we have definitely moved on. We find it difficult not to incur the economic damages, but at least the lives saved is considerable. So we've made a lot of progress.
As we create protective systems and improve construction to save lives, the economic cost of each disaster rises. Though the death toll has become much reduced, 2017's natural disasters will remain etched in the minds of those who survived the planet's wrath. The Disaster Diaries is not an exhaustive study of the year's catastrophes. Many are not included in this account. A mudslide in Sierra Leone killed 500 people. An earthquake in Iran killed 540. And every year the monsoons on the Indian subcontinent take the lives of thousands. In December, the 5th largest wildfire in California's history burned more than 1,000 homes and reduced 230,000 acres of land to ash. Our planet's atmosphere bears the indelible marks of human activity, but mankind is learning to defend itself from the violence of the weather that it has unleashed.